Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7 here on Broadcasting Scotland. My name's Kenny McBride and I'm joined this evening by two excellent guests. Firstly, from the Save Loch Lomond campaign, Sam Paton. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm fine, Kenny. How are you? And this evening we've got Rihanna. Rihanna's decided to join me.
Well, good evening to Rihanna as well. And on the other side of me, we have Andrew Wilson from All Under One Banner. Andrew, how are you doing?
Kenny, I'm fine, thank you. Good evening. How are you?
I'm not bad at all. So we start this evening, as we always do, with our coronavirus statistics update. And as of 2 p.m. today, a total of 700,387 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and UK government regional testing centres. Excuse me. Of these, 677,104 were confirmed negative, 23,283 were positive. There were 267 new confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Scotland today, and one new reported death of someone who had tested positive. This will, of course, be an underestimate of the total number of cases, as not everyone with the virus will necessarily display symptoms, and not everyone with symptoms will necessarily get tested. As always, we urge you, if you are showing symptoms, a new persistent dry cough, a fever, or a loss or change in your sense of taste and smell, then do please book a test as quickly as you can. Of the people who have tested positive, there were 51 people in hospital last night, 6 of whom were in intensive care. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 2,501. This number only includes those who have died in hospital having received a positive test for the virus. And the latest UK daily figures available show that 41,684 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 20 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not just those in hospitals. And we also have the National Records of Scotland report, and as at the 13th of September, a total of 4,236 deaths have been registered in Scotland where the novel coronavirus was mentioned on the death certificate, according to statistics published by the National Records of Scotland today. Between the 17th and 13th of September, which was week 37 of the year, 5 deaths were registered that mentioned COVID-19 on the death certificate, 2 of which occurred in a care home and 3 in a hospital. To put these statistics in context, the total number of all-cause deaths registered in the same week was 1,056, 5% higher than the average over the previous 5 years. NRS also published updated analysis of who is most affected by the pandemic. The data continue to show that people in the most deprived areas are more than twice as likely to die with COVID-19 as those in the least deprived areas. People in urban areas were around 4 times more likely to die as those in more remote rural areas. And the overwhelming majority of those who have died had some underlying condition. The most common was dementia and Alzheimer's disease, which affected almost a third of all those who have died with the disease. And before we go on to the rest of tonight's news, if you'd like to join the conversation here, you can do so on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at BroadcastScot and use the hashtag Scotland@7. That's hashtag Scotland80 and the number 7. And as you can see, we'll flash some of those tweets up on the screen throughout the show. Oh, and just a wee reminder as well, while we're talking about coronavirus, if you haven't downloaded the app yet, then please do. I did myself a couple of days ago. It's very simple, very straightforward, doesn't ask for any personal information. And as far as we know, doesn't harvest any information about you that you don't want to be known. It is completely anonymized as far as we can see. So if you are concerned about that, then please do have a look at the information that's online and then download the app. It does make a difference. But our top story tonight, the Tory government's law officer for Scotland's offer to resign has left Scottish Tory leader Douglas Ross totally exposed in his failure to act in Scotland's interests and oppose Boris Johnson's internal market bill, which threatens a huge power grab on the Scottish Parliament. The decision by the Advocate General for Scotland, Lord Keane of Ely, to quit makes him the latest in a series of Tory grandees to resign over the UK government's plans to break international law with the bill, which threatens the Good Friday Agreement and the future of devolution. But Douglas Ross and other Scottish Tory MPs have so far backed the proposals, despite Mr Ross pledging to stand up to Boris Johnson when Scotland's interests were at stake. Now, Andrew, this whole case, we've seen several law officers, legal advisors to the government resign. We're now seeing the Law Society mounting a campaign to uphold the rule of law. I mean, what kind of country are we living in just now?
Well, Kenny, I think we can take a little bit of comfort that various professional bodies have been making their opinion known on this topic. As you see, the Law Society, both law societies in England and in Scotland, other legal commentators have been commenting as well. And so there is some tiny chink. And actually, to be fair to the Advocate General for Scotland, he does, after a period of reflection, seem to have done the decent thing. I think there was difficulty insofar as it was apparent that the government was refusing to take his legal advice. There was a difficulty insofar as it appears that he may have misled the House of Lords yesterday afternoon when talking about this subject. And then there is the much more fundamental issue, which is, as a member of the Faculty of Advocates, the Advocate General owes obligations not to break the law. Professionally, as a law officer, I suspect he may have sworn an oath of office that requires him to uphold the law. And so his own position was beset by difficulty. And so I think we maybe take some small crumb of comfort from the fact that he's done the correct thing, and the issues arising have been recognised. I suppose the difficulty, in a sense, there's now the interesting challenge of who are they going to get to replace him? Because he, having resigned in these circumstances, and I should say also the unlawful activity that's being threatened is in breach of the ministerial code as well. So the challenge, the checks and balances are there, and they seem to be working at the moment. The challenge might be, however, if whoever it is who they can persuade to replace Lord Keane. If his replacement takes a different view and the checks and balances stop working, at that point I'd be very concerned.
Now, Andrew, we've also seen reports of legally qualified MPs on the Tory benches being contacted by their superiors and told, you're not going to be able to practice law if you go down this road. Is that a serious threat against the lawyers amongst the Tory benches?
I think it is, to be honest. If they take their professional obligations and the oath that they swore when they went into the legal profession, and if they take their responsibility to the court. Principally, this is about the responsibility of legal practitioners not to mislead the court and not to be put in positions where they are breaking the law. So I think there is potentially some heat here, and as you say, we saw a special envoy of the Prime Minister's resign this morning, I think, and it was on the basis that he felt that his position as a barrister would be under threat. And of course, we know that when she spoke to when Suella Braverman spoke with lawyers last week, I think she had quite a rough time, as you would expect, because most legal practitioners take their professional obligations quite seriously. These professional obligations are after all, their license, their ticket to practice. And so, yes, I think anything that puts your professional position and your income under threat is a serious threat.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sam, you perhaps have slightly less knowledge of the intricacies of being a lawyer than Andrew does, but if we're looking at this whole thing, what's your guess about how this is going to play out? I mean, do you think that somehow some rabbit is going to be pulled out of the hat that makes all of this okay? Or do you expect the UK government just to keep going, break the law and smash the devolution settlement, and that'll just be how the new normal is?
Well, I think Rihanna here is not impressed with everything that's going on. We certainly want to get her opinion over. And but anyway, no, I don't have a great knowledge in kind of lawyers and things like that. But in terms of, from what I do know, just as a normal citizen of Scotland, even to me, this is quite worrying, because when you've got the Advocate General turning around and saying that he's resigning and he's concerned about the way things are going and the legality of the Internal Markets Bill, then you don't need to be an expert to know that that's it. There's something not right, and the UK government are determined to break the law. But the one thing I did do this afternoon, when I found out I was coming on the show, I decided to do a research on Lord Keane, and basically he led Article 50 for there was no constitutional requirement for any of the devolved administrations to consent to Brexit. Now, going back to that, maybe if he hadn't argued against the administrations, then maybe things would have taken a different turn at this stage and we wouldn't be sitting here right now. So I think so there's a wee bit of maybe, how can I say, maybe things
made his own
slightly
bed.
different. Yeah, that's the phrase I was trying to think of. But however, Kenny, at the end of the day, as Andrew says, how are they going to fill the position? How are they going to fill this job? Because what lawyer in Scotland worth their salt is going to actually take this position on now? Basically, the positions became unattainable, really.
Well, we will obviously keep watching. The Internal Market Bill obviously still working its way through Westminster, and we will keep you updated on all developments as they come along. But there's a lot more going on, and the SNP has said that the Tory government's decision to shut a coronavirus testing centre to make way for a Brexit lorry park shows the Tories have all the wrong priorities. Dr. Philippa Whitford said it was beyond reckless for Boris Johnson to impose an extreme Brexit in the middle of a global pandemic and economic crisis, and warned it would threaten jobs, the economy and people's lives. The SNP Shadow Health Secretary said the Tories are inflicting lasting Brexit damage on Scotland and the UK at a time when infection rates are rising, and said the priority for the UK government should be getting a grip of its coronavirus testing chaos. The call comes as EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen told the European Parliament today that she felt the chances of a timely agreement between the UK and EU were starting to fade. And we have a wee clip of that speech now.
With every day that passes, the chances for a timely agreement do start to fade. Negotiations are always difficult, and we are used to that. And the Commission has the best and most experienced negotiator, Michel Barnier, to navigate us through that. But talks have not progressed as we would have wished, and that leaves us very little time. As ever, this House will be the first to know, and it will be the one that has the last say. And I can assure you we will continue to update you thoroughly, just as we did with the withdrawal agreement. And the European Union and the UK jointly agreed it was the best and only way for ensuring peace on the island of Ireland. And we will never backtrack on that. And this agreement has been ratified by this House and by the House of Commons. It cannot be unilaterally changed, disregarded or disapplied. This is a matter of law and trust and good faith. And that is not just me saying it. I remind you of the words of Margaret Thatcher. I quote, "Britain does not break treaties. It would be bad for Britain, bad for relations with the rest of the world, and bad for any future treaty on trade." End of quote. This was true then, and this is true today.
So, Andrew, one of the issues here obviously is time, and we've Are we just in a situation now where there's so much happening that it's just not possible to kind of pause and deal with any of it? Is that maybe why coronavirus testing is in a bit of chaos? Why Brexit is in chaos? That we just don't have the time to look at all these things in the detail they need.
Well, certainly, Kenny. I think either of those two challenges, either Brexit or the pandemic, would have significantly challenged any government and any administration. But I think the combination of the two together just drives the message home that it is reckless in the extreme to be continuing to pursue the Brexit agenda at this time when the economy is in bits, the world economy is in bits. People are very uncertain about their future in the workforce and are very concerned still for the welfare and well-being of family and friends. And so to be overlaying that with the severe uncertainty of either a very thin Brexit agreement, or as seems to be probably more likely no Brexit agreement at all. I think that does an astonishing amount of harm and damage to people and to the economy and to the country, and it is proving to be beyond the capability of the current Westminster government, which is quite a poor government as it is, at least in terms of the cabinet. It's proving impossible for the Westminster government to get a grip on either of these situations, let alone both. And I think at the same time, I'm not surprised that with the line of attack that's being taken here as regards Brexit. I certainly sense the hand of Michael Gove here, in particular with regard to Ireland. We know that he has written at length in the past of his disregard for the Good Friday Agreement, and I'm not at all surprised that there are attempts being made which may manipulate and engineer a situation where the Good Friday Agreement is either damaged or broken, and he certainly, I think, has little care for the consequences of that, including potentially the US saying that as a result of the Good Friday Agreement being damaged, there ain't going to be any trade deal between the US and the UK.
Mm-hmm. And Sam, we often ask, what's going on in the minds of the Tories. Is this, do you think, a case of incompetence where they've kind of taken on Brexit without realising how big a problem it was, then not really got on top of the coronavirus and all these other issues just piling up on each other? Or do you think there is some guiding principle behind all this chaos, where they're actually getting all the things done that they really want to get done? Like, for example, damaging peace in Northern Ireland, damaging the devolution settlement, all these things that people like Michael Gove have always wanted to do.
Crikey, you're asking me to dive into the minds of these lunatics. Crikey, I would rather not. Thank you very much. It would be, I don't think I would ever recover. But in terms of, I think they're doing it deliberate. And that's the God's honest truth. I think they're doing it deliberate. It's about control. It's about who's making money out of all this. And basically, they don't care what they destroy in the process as long as they get to the end result. And that includes the peace treaty process with, the Good Friday Agreement, the Act of Union, everything. Even with the agreement between the UK government and the EU, they do not care in any shape or size or anything else about how this is going to affect anybody, as long as whoever's railroading this is basically going to make money out of it. And that's what it comes down to. It's about money.
Well, we move on now to Holyrood, and UK Business Secretary Alok Sharma has refused to give evidence to the Scottish Parliament on his own UK Internal Market Bill. The bill, which is currently working its way through Westminster, is set to constrain the independent action of the devolved legislatures, breaching the devolution settlement and British constitutional norms. It also threatens to break international law, risking the Good Friday Peace Agreement in Ireland and the UK's wider reputation as a reliable international actor. Commenting on the news, Scottish Green co-leader Patrick Harvey said, "The UK government is showing contempt for international law, for the Northern Ireland peace process, for the Scottish and Welsh parliaments, and is even trashing the UK's own reputation for keeping its word. Now they are refusing even the most cursory democratic scrutiny in Parliament at the same time as seizing the power to overrule Scots law and the decisions of the Scottish courts. It's hard to see how they could make this calculated assault against Scotland's democracy any more insulting than they already have." So, Andrew, do you have any ideas on how the Tories could be any more insulting?
That's quite a stretch. I have a funny feeling, however, that those who are advising Douglas Ross will be coming up with as many wheezes as they possibly can in that regard. I think the level of disrespect is calculated and is intentional. As part of a story of defunding or sidelining or reducing or in general attacking Holyrood and Cardiff and Stormont, for that matter. I think there is a definite policy here of to unpick 20 years of devolution in Scotland that more than 70% of the population voted for. So I think the targets that are available to a Tory administration which is hell bent on indicating its disrespect, as you say, for the EU, for international norms, for the devolved settlement in the UK, and which is showing a lack of respect for the international community as well, insofar as it's apparent that the government doesn't really care that it's seen as an international actor who cannot be relied upon. I think with such a dangerous and unprecedented approach from a UK government, I think we're entering uncharted waters, and so all manner of sharks are in there in terms of the way in which they will seek to diminish and attack the devolved settlement in other ways.
Mm. And Sam, there is a kind of general point here, isn't there, that the Scottish Parliament can't really compel UK ministers or indeed a number of other people to appear before its committees. It's basically a voluntary thing. Do you think that's something that needs to be tightened up?
Of course it does, Kenny, because at the end of the day, these people are elected representatives of us, or they should be, funny enough. So they've got to be able to be held accountable. So yes, they should be basically held to task. And the fact they're refusing to do so just shows you the kind of the contempt they've got for the devolved administrations. At this moment in time, I mean, when you see the behaviour of the Tories and the UK government, it's like the old movies depicting the history of the British Empire going around the world colonising. That's the way they're behaving. They've got absolutely no respect for anybody at all in the world, never mind even respect for those who are living within the UK. Mm-hmm. They have got no respect for anyone at the moment as long as they get their end goal or their end result.
Mm. Well, we go
Kenny,
now.
It suddenly crossed my mind that I thought UK ministers were meant to be travelling to Scotland. I thought they all said they were going to come here and show up. So maybe Bruce Crawford, who I think is convener of the committee that Sharma has said that he won't give evidence to, maybe if he organises for that committee to convene, maybe in a Baxter soup factory or at RAF Kinloss or on a moor in Orkney, maybe he'll find a Westminster minister who's prepared to speak. It just crossed my mind.
Well, I think possibly in order to get the whole committee there, it would have to be a grouse shoot. But
well, no, there's an idea. Yeah, or maybe in the middle of the Clyde.
Maybe so. We do move on now, though, and this is quite a disturbing story from the US. America's most senior Democrat, the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, has joined mounting calls for an investigation into an Immigration and Customs Enforcement detention center in Georgia accused of performing hysterectomies on migrant women held there without their full consent. Pelosi branded the substance of allegations presented by a whistleblowing nurse as a staggering abuse of human rights. The nurse, Dawn Wooten, who worked at Irwin County Detention Centre for 3 years, made a whistleblower complaint filed on her behalf on Monday, in which she accused the centre of negligence, poor safety precautions, including around the spread of coronavirus. She cited dangerous and unsanitary conditions and an alarmingly high rate of hysterectomies performed on Spanish-speaking women whom she said she and other nurses feared did not understand what procedure they were undergoing. If true, the appalling conditions described in the whistleblower complaint, including allegations of mass hysterectomies being performed on vulnerable immigrant women, are a staggering abuse of human rights, Pelosi said in a statement. And Sam, I mean, this is quite a difficult thing to talk about. What do you make of this whole story?
This is just absolutely heartbreaking. When I first heard about this before we came on the show, I was just gobsmacked, speechless. It's just how in this day and age that something like this could be happening to these poor women. I would imagine these women are of childbearing age, so they'll be young women with their lives ahead of them. For these doctors, surgeons to basically brutally do this to them. And I would imagine that they don't fully understand what's happening. And it's something that you would hear that came out of a Nazi concentration camp. I would imagine it's just absolutely appalling. I mean, how do you even begin to contemplate what these women have been through, and to end up in this centre and then to go for an operation to then find out you're not able to have children. It's just, honestly, there's just no words. There's absolutely no words, Kenny, at all. It's just no words. It's mind blowing, totally mind blowing.
Yeah, Andrew. We try to avoid making comparisons with the Nazis. It's not often very useful, but this is something that Nazis did, was forced sterilizations of undesirable groups. Do you really think the US is on that path?
Well, Kenny, I certainly think that systemic or organised physical brutality towards people who have been put into custody is certainly a hallmark of despotic or other tyrannical regimes. Or regimes which are out of control in terms of any observance of what would be expected as moral behaviour, let alone legal behaviour. So the seriousness of this allegation couldn't be more serious in terms of what it is said by the whistleblower has happened here, and that it has been continuing, as Sam says, with the connivance and collaboration of medical professionals and others. It's a very, very serious charge. I think it's also worth thinking about, and I am thinking about, the fact that this is violence being done to women, which is a regular sign of dictatorship behaviour or behaviour of regimes that are out of control. And so, whilst recognising the sheer horror of the allegations that are being made, I think it's also it's not a surprise, but it's equally horrific that this is activity that is clearly focused on women.
We will obviously keep watching that story as it develops. At the moment, obviously, it's just one allegation, but we will keep watching to see what else comes up about that story. But we come back to Scotland now, and the chief statistician has released statistics showing that the economy contracted by 19.4% during the second quarter of 2020, which is the period from April to June. Change in gross domestic product is the main indicator of economic growth. Over the year, compared to the second quarter of 2019, the economy has contracted by 21.1%. During the second quarter, output in the construction sector contracted by 41.5%, output in production contracted by 15.7%, and output in the service sector contracted by 18.7%. The second estimate of GDP for the second quarter of 2020 will be available in Quarterly National Accounts Scotland, which is published on the 28th of October. The first estimate for the third quarter will be published on the 20th of December. Andrew, if I can come to you first on this. It's not a shock that the economy contracted substantially in that quarter. But again, I think we come back to this question: how useful is GDP to us when we're facing a global pandemic?
Well, Kenny, that's a very good point. I think, well, of course, the First Minister in a TED Talk, I think it was a couple of years ago, spoke about changing the measurement of success of countries and of economies by introducing more meaningful measurements that are more meaningful to individuals. GDP is, it doesn't resonate with individual citizens really very much at all, and so I think as you say, this contraction comes as no surprise, and I think we're going to be in this hole for several months to come yet, if not well into next year. I know there is some suggestion that the economy bounced a little bit towards the end of the period, but I think we're going to be in this deep financial hole for a long time. And it may well be in that case that, as you suggest, using alternative measurements of satisfaction or of other measurements of the way in which the population are feeling, I think that becomes even more relevant. And I think it is something that we know the First Minister supports, and I think it is something that we should be pressing ahead to look at.
Mm-hmm. And Sam, we've seen these numbers or similar numbers before. We've talked a lot about the economy over the last few months. Do you think there is a sense that we are kind of looking at something very different now, or when you hear these economic numbers talked about, does it sometimes feel like there's not really been any change in how economists are looking at the world?
Yeah, I think the economists need to catch up with the rest of us, and how we look at the world and how we measure success. But with everything, it takes time. As they say, Rome wasn't built in a day. We know at the moment, in terms of the financial system and the economy, things are not looking very bright due to COVID, and then with upcoming Brexit. But we need to be looking at quality of life as well. How this affects the people, normal everyday citizens. And we need to, economists need to be starting to look at that, because the world is changing, and the world is changing very quickly due to COVID. Businesses are having to adapt, people are having to adapt. It's up to the economists to now start adapting and catching up with everybody else.
Well, we do have a number of economic stories today. Extending the furlough scheme by 8 months could save 61,000 jobs in Scotland, according to new research. A Scottish Government report estimates that the direct cost of extending the furlough scheme in Scotland to June is around £850 million, and wider economic benefits, such as increasing GDP, mean that it could pay for itself. It comes as the business impact of COVID-19 statistics, also published today, found that of all Scottish firms surveyed, over 2/3 were still furloughing their workforce to some extent. The new data also estimated 15% of the workforce were still in furlough. And Sam, this is one of the points that it seems like the UK government just isn't grasping, just how many people are still in need of furlough. As we said, that there have been these fundamental changes that are not going to be resolved by October. Do you think there is any chance of useful, meaningful support being in place in the next few weeks to cope with the end of the furlough scheme?
Well, to be honest with you, Kenny, I think a lot of it might be too little too late for a lot of people, because so many people have already lost their jobs and been made redundant. So many businesses have already had to close their doors. This decision, but then again, that just goes to show you I can't even get the word out, the idiocracy of the UK government. They see things in short term rather than long term. And when COVID was apparent what was going to be happening, even before this is things that they should have been discussing and they should have had in place. But everything's a half-baked plan, and then it's last minute. To turn around and run the furlough scheme until the end of October was a bit short-sighted, because a lot of businesses are still not either up and running fully, or will not be opened come the end of October. So it's putting jobs at risk. And then if you look at all the ones that have already been paid off at the end of August, or even before August, they could have, when they decided the furlough scheme, they should have really turned around and put it down for a year with they could have easily put breaks in for companies that were able to get up and running quicker and get back to work. But for those who couldn't and who were really financially struggling, the furlough scheme should have been for around about a year, because there was no way, we knew right from the beginning, there was no way COVID was just going to disappear overnight. So why they done this makes absolute no economic sense. It just doesn't make any common sense whatsoever to why they only had the furlough scheme until the end of October.
Yeah. And Andrew, I mean, this doesn't just affect the individuals who are perhaps going to lose out on that income. It takes a massive chunk out of the demand side of the economy. There are businesses that are going to find it harder to stay afloat because fewer people have enough income to be able to afford their services. I mean, is this premature ending of furlough going to lead to a real dive kind of into a depression?
Well, I certainly think, Kenny, thinking about it a little bit just now, the approach that it's being suggested that will be taken, which is, as you say, to wind down and then terminate the furlough scheme imminently. I suppose, if you look at it in terms of demand-led economics, it's consistent with the last 11 years of Tory austerity. They have sucked money out of the national economy by defunding local authorities, defunding central government departments, defunding all manner of activities, and the impact on people and on the national economy has been absolutely clear. And I think even Osborne had gone so far as to suggest that he felt that the austerity had gone too far under his watch. And I suppose, in a sense, that kind of dogmatic determination, no matter the damage it does, that dogmatic determination is at least consistent from the Tories. But you're absolutely right. There is the economic damage of taking money out of people's pockets, which is what this will do. And then there's the resultant and increasing damage that then is done as that ripples out as businesses who would have had those people as consumers and customers go to the wall because their consumers and customers don't have the money to spend that they would otherwise have had.
Well, we move on a wee bit now, and new statistics from the annual population survey show that 299,000 young people aged 16 to 24 were in employment in Scotland in July 2019 to June 2020. The employment rate for young people was 53.2%, lower than a year ago when it was 59.1%. In the same period, 32,000 young people aged 16 to 24 were unemployed. The unemployment rate for young people was 9.6%, which was lower than a year ago at 9.8%. And in the same period, 231,000 young people aged 16 to 24 years were economically inactive. The economic inactivity rate for young people was 41.1%, higher than the year before when it was 34.5%. Now, Sam, obviously, some of these declines are because these statistics go up to June of this year when a lot of people weren't working, and in many cases, it was young people who were hit hardest by the lockdown impact on employment. What do you make of this? Do you think there's enough being done to support young people to develop some kind of future in this economy that we're facing?
Oh, crikey. Now you're asking. Um, ah, as a mum of that age group, I must say my 20-year-old is actually quite lucky. He's in employment and he's secure. But as in general, before he got this job, even before he was in this job, he found support for that age group actually quite poor. Um, and he found it quite difficult to get support to get a job. But it was through friends of friends that eventually got his job. I think we could always do better to support the young ones, especially just now. It's so important giving them skills, whether it's putting more money into academia or putting more money into apprenticeships. Because one of the things we keep forgetting, and we keep doing it as adults, we keep doing it with our young adults, we keep forgetting that not everybody is academically minded and not everybody is practically minded, and we seem to just kind of pigeonhole people, and we need to stop doing that, and we need to start getting our youngsters, getting what their strengths are and focusing on that and really encouraging them. And if that means even getting them to be, if we get them trained up and encouraging them to go self-employed, setting up their own wee businesses and things like that with support, then that's the way to go forward. And it's a way to grow an economy as well. But it's going to be really hard with COVID at the moment, because I know the colleges and universities are starting to start back up again. They're due to start back up again, and it's going to make things could get quite difficult. So we need to somehow make it work, whether it's a kind of, I don't know, getting them out there working with businesses, or I don't know. It's a hard one, but yes, we do need to support them. We really, really do. I just don't know how we do it.
Yeah, Andrew, we've seen for quite a long time now this shift towards more casual work, 0 hours contracts. Younger people already have a lower rate of pay. The national minimum wage is lower for this age group. Benefits are reduced for this age group. And yet there's very few kind of secure career paths for young people to get into these days. Do we need to just have a look at the whole shape of the economy here and finding better paths for young people?
I think we do, Kenny, because if we continue on the path that we've been following for the last 10 years, we can see now that the circumstances and the prospects and the opportunities for young people in particular are going to deteriorate, and we can't carry on like that. The economic danger is clear, but I think strongly that the social danger is at least as great. If we end up with a generation or more who are disenfranchised economically, feel that there is no prospect and no future, and they feel that the opportunities that our society offers them, which were offered to people who were older than they are, if they feel those opportunities don't exist anymore, I don't think they're going to respond very positively. So I think there are significant social implications for continuing this approach, which has the effect of excluding young people in many ways. And we need fundamentally to move away from the gig economy, move away from the very, very employer-focused approach that we've had for the last 10, 12 years, and we need to start putting people first.
Well, we do have some good news for young people. Scottish Government funding for youth work is being increased by more than 30% to recognise the vital role the sector will play in making up any ground lost in learning during the coronavirus pandemic. A newly created £3 million Youth Work Education Recovery Fund will be targeted at those communities and young people who need the most support, bringing government spending in the youth work sector this year to at least £12.5 million. The Recovery Fund will be administered by YouthLink Scotland, the National Youth Work Agency. The fund is open for applications from community learning and development services that help young people engage and re-engage with learning. Submissions should support partnership work between November 2020 and the end of August 2021. Sam, do you think this will be a good tool for helping young people recover from the problems that they've faced in their education over the last 6 months?
I think it'll help, Kenny. It's going to be one tool in a large toolbox to help kids to get on top of their what they've lost in their education. But yeah, I think it will help, and it'll be. I guess we're just going to have to see how it's going to work out and pan out, because we don't know what's ahead. I think at the moment, yes, the Scottish Government's trying to kind of make plans and put things in place, but as it stands with COVID and Brexit, it's quite difficult to look in the crystal ball to see what the future holds. So, as I say, I think it's one tool in a very large toolbox in helping and supporting the youngsters.
Yeah, Andrew, much same question to you. Do you think this is on the right track for helping kids to get back into education and maybe make up some of that ground that they've lost?
Yes, Kenny, I do. I think it's important that we innovate, but also that we invest. So I think drawing on resources from all across the sectors who would be in a position to direct assistance and advice and support to young people at what is a very difficult time. I think everybody should be focusing. I support the Scottish Government in focusing on that area, and I think we probably need to do more. Of course, everyone who is part of our community, part of Scotland, has suffered during 2020, but I think it is pretty clear that young people have suffered significantly, and I think we need to focus efforts in their direction and money in order to seek to mitigate as best we can the worst excesses of the damage that the crisis has caused.
Yeah. Well, we move on now, and more Scottish Government money being announced. Fuel-poor households are to benefit from a further £16 million investment to improve energy efficiency in their homes. The money will be used to improve insulation and install energy-efficient heating systems, including those using renewable technology, contributing to Scotland's net zero targets and helping to meet a key programme for government commitment. Warmer Homes Scotland, the Scottish Government's national fuel poverty scheme, will receive £6 million, while area-based schemes delivered by local authorities will receive £10 million. And Sam, we've heard talk for years about reducing fuel poverty in Scotland. Do you think this is on the right path, or do you think there's a lot more needs to be done?
It's certainly on the right path, Kenny. The thing is, with Scotland, where we sit in the world, we tend to be a pretty cold, wet and dirty country, and there's not much we can do about that, especially during the winter months. In the summertime, it's warm rain, as we laugh about. But however, every little bit helps. I mean, because especially in the West Coast, it can get pretty damp. The homes can get pretty damp, and that in itself has a lot of health issues for people, especially vulnerable people. So every penny counts, and getting our homes to be warm and cosy during the winter months.
And Andrew, this is obviously a huge thing. The Scottish Government has been plugging away at this for a long time, but there was a target to eliminate fuel poverty in Scotland by 2016, and we're still not really close to it. Do you feel the Scottish Government is doing enough here?
I think it's. I think that at a time when there are competing priorities for money and attention, I think it's clear that we could do more. I think there is. I think it's important in this particular announcement. I think there's something like £5 million for the Western Isles and the Northern Isles. And I think that's an important demonstration of commitment to those areas where these schemes can be more difficult to implement because the housing is less dense, bluntly. And I think it's important to show in financial terms that attention is paid to the particular needs of those communities in the Western Isles and the Northern Isles. But yes, I think a deeper and a broader approach to fuel poverty is required. We know that the powers that the Scottish Government has to address some of the more systemic, some of the more fundamental issues that are in the midst of the problems of fuel poverty. The Scottish Government doesn't necessarily have the powers to address them. However, insofar as it can exercise the powers that it does have, and these investments and these schemes are an example of those powers, then we should do more because again, in terms of improving people's lives, but also in terms of addressing the difficulties that people face due to fuel poverty right now, it's a priority. If nothing else, as Sam says, because of the prevailing climate that we have in Scotland, it's a priority for people.
Absolutely. And our final story tonight, unfortunately, has not appeared on my auto cue, I think because of an editing mistake I made just before the show started. But we did want to mention that Barbados, former British colony, has decided to become a republic. It will remove the current Queen as its head of state as of November. And I wish I had more detail to say. As I say, this hasn't shown up on my auto cue. But Sam, Barbados becoming a republic, do you think this is something for us to celebrate?
Yes, I do. Well done, Barbados. They finally broke away from the colonisation, and good on them, and so proud for them and so chuffed. And I wish them well, which I'm sure they will prosper. And I think it's great. I really do.
And Andrew, I mean, we've seen this debate being had in Jamaica recently. We've seen it in Australia a couple of years ago. And the Barbadian president, I believe it was, spoke today about this, saying that this was the last part of decolonisation, was finally getting a Barbadian head of state for Barbados. Do you think this is something that we're going to see more of, and maybe see that Commonwealth where the Queen is still the head of state shrink somewhat over the next few years?
Yes, Kenny. I think as countries around the world, former British colonies. Barbados has been independent since the 60s, I think. But as they grow in confidence and they begin to establish the structures and the regimes that are appropriate for independent nation states, I think we are going to see more of it. In particular, and it'll come as no surprise to you at all, that I think that perhaps countries quite close, countries in the British Isles, who are perhaps considering their independence and their status, should reflect on what the Beijing government have been saying. I think the Prime Minister had said that now was the time for Barbados to leave their colonial past behind. She also said that this was the ultimate statement of confidence by the Barbadian people in who they are, and also I think in responding, Buckingham Palace have said that they consider this to be a matter for the people of Barbados. I think there are a number of lessons in there that perhaps the people of Scotland might think about.
And Sam, we do just have a couple of minutes left. On that note, do you think one of the things that was discussed quite a bit last time was the question of the monarchy in Scotland, in a potential independent Scotland? Do you think the mood around that question has changed? Do you think in a potential future independence referendum, the the pro-independence side might be a wee bit more staunchly Republican?
I think it's one of those ones where it's natural progression. And as Andrew had said, with Barbados, as confidence grows and the people get to know who they are once again and they want their own head of state, I think in Scotland would take the same path. It's a natural pathway. How long it takes is up to the people of Scotland. It's up to them to decide whether it's a year, 2 years, 10 years, 50 years, or 100 years down the line. But I think it is a natural pathway, and it's up for the people of Scotland to make that decision.
Well, that is a nice place to end. I'd like to thank Sam and Andrew very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have them. And we'd like to thank you for joining us as well. There would be no point at all in making these shows if we didn't have an audience. And we know we've had a lot of new viewers in the last week or two as well. So welcome to all of you. You will get used to this bit. This is where I ask for your money. Please, if you can, do go to broadcastingscotland.scot/register and sign up there as a supporter. This is pretty much the only income that Broadcasting Scotland has. It's how we are able to bring these shows to you. And it's not a cheap business, even allowing for the fact that we're only, we're very lightly staffed. We don't take up a lot of space, but it does cost money just to have the technology, the energy that we use, our internet bills, all these kind of things. So if you are able to support us financially, then please do go and do that. If you can't, we absolutely do understand. We've talked a lot today about how people's incomes are affected by the pandemic. Shows will always be free to view online, though. You're always welcome to join us. But you can still make a big difference for us. If you follow us on Twitter, @BroadcastScot, if you find us on Facebook, if you subscribe to our channel on YouTube and click the wee bell icon there to be notified about new videos, you can then share those videos around with your friends and family. Let people know why you support Broadcasting Scotland and why you think Broadcasting Scotland deserves their support. It will take a lot more of us to build the better broadcaster that Scotland deserves, and you letting your friends and family know about us is the first step towards that. And finally, if you'd like to take a bigger role than just talking about us or even donating money, you can donate some time to us. Please do, if you're interested in any way in broadcasting, then let us know. We've got lots of opportunities here, lots of work to be done, and we'd love to have more people involved. We don't think we can be the kind of broadcaster that Scotland deserves without more people to make it all happen. So do please get in touch with us if you've got any interest in that area. However, that is pretty much all we have time for tonight. So I'd like to thank Andrew and Sam once again. Gordon will be back tomorrow at 7 with another Scotland at 7. I'll be back on Friday with another special edition, and then on Sunday with the full Scottish at noon. But until then, have a great evening. Good night.